Hello, everyone, and welcome to this new section of the Spanish Chamber of Commerce in the United Kingdom, known as Trade Tips. From the Foreign Trade Department, we believe that the problems or other important aspects to be considered when doing business with other countries. Being the purpose of these short videos that we are starting today to give information about it. This first edition will explain existing fraud that many Spanish companies have experienced and that has also affected British companies when trading with Spain. There will be a short introduction of the context of the problem, and this problem will be explained, as well as the main affected industries mentioned. To conclude, we will give some recommendations and refer to some guidance that could be given if facing this problem. Here we can see the trade statistics between Spain and the United Kingdom. Both imports and exports, as we can see, have remained constant and increased even after the June 2016 Brexit referendum, showing the strong trade relations between the two countries. And this is an important fact to keep in mind because the kind of fraud that we are explaining today um, has increased in the last 5 years, precisely after the consolidation of the trade relations between Spain and the United Kingdom. Um, the fraud we're talking about today, the most common one is the European distribution fraud, which basically involves that a company, a fake company, tries to get steal the ID of the real company from both Spain and the United Kingdom. They try to pretend to be a real company by having a similar email address, by having similar contact details, and they try to get an order from the company in the UK or in Spain, because this kind of process can affect both countries in this case. Um, Apart from that, I have to say that this fraud affects both small and medium companies, but also big companies. So any of the companies in Spain and the United Kingdom could be affected actually. And thirdly, we will see in which ways we can support and help to identify potential risk and frauds. We have separated the existing problem of this fraud in six different elements that could help us identify to identify if we are facing a fraud or not when receiving this kind of communications. The first element, as we can see, refers that 75% of cases are via email, and they pretend to be a real company and they copy the email address. Um, so we have to check that the email address is real. We have to compare with previous contacts that we have with that company that we know for sure that they're real, and also we have to not trust when a high volume order with no prior contact comes from this kind of email addresses. As a second element, there is a very similar email address in order to create confusion and make the company sell its products. We've mentioned this in the first element, as 75% of the cases happen via email. They try to make you believe that they are the real company. We have seen cases in which only one single name is different, but the rest of the email address is pretty similar to the real one. So we have to pay attention to this one. As a third element, we see that the present in first exhibition is a way to increase trust in the company. Um, we have identified numerous people pretending to be the real company that have attended first exhibitions because they know that this is a way in which the company back in Spain or the United Kingdom uh, could could trust them a bit more. We have to think if we know the person before, if we have some references for that person, if we can check some information of that person online as well. There's a difference between knowing the person or not knowing that person and receiving a big order with no prior conversation, with no prior negotiation as well. This is also related to the element number 4, in which we have a confirmation of an order without asking for normally asked information like prices, for example, like references from other companies that we work with, that kind of things that would normally be asked by a potential client. Um, Also, the possibility of a change in the delivery address is an element that should be considered as a potential risk, but we will further explain this one later. As an element 5, we have seen cases in which the payment of part of the value of the product is requested, but also the papers of the customs, the port, airport, that they've been falsified, and they're asking for payment of taxes that don't exist. We have to double check this information to make sure this is not real. In the case of the European Union, this shouldn't be a case. So in the case of Spain, this shouldn't be happening. And they believe me when I say that they made these documents to look pretty real. So we have to be careful, and when receiving this kind of documents and this kind of request for payments, we should be wondering if we are facing a fraud of the similar to the one we explained today in here. As the last element we have identified as a characteristic of this kind of fraud would be that there are fake bank transfer documents that are sold to the company back in Spain or the UK. Payments of the order. We have to remember that the most important thing when doing business is to make sure that we receive the payment of the order. So we have to check if the bank transfer that we have received is correct, if that document that is showing a bank transfer is real or not, in order to make sure that there is not a fraud happening here. But what are the main affected industries? We have seen that the food and drink industries have been or are the most affected ones when talking about this fraud in here. But there have been cases of stolen machinery, solar panels, but also automotive parts, automotive components that have been stolen. We have previously spoken in other presentations about the most demanded industries between the UK and Spain, and those would be also the most affected ones. We see that the most demanded ones are the automotive industry, the food and drinks, and the chemical and components, as well as the consumer goods ones. We don't want to say that companies or industries that are not included within this slide are not affected, but we have to consider that these four industries represent the majority of the trade between the two countries, and therefore they would be the most the ones at highest risk of this kind of frauds. Um, Having said that, we will give some recommendations here, not to be a victim as a company of this kind of fraud. First of all, do not trust easy orders without negotiations, without prior contacts, or without asking for certain information like prices, references from other companies we have worked for example. Check company details, the address, the phone, the email address, and check the order details as well to make sure that it's real. Also verify bank transfer data with the bank. Make sure that the warehouse also belongs to the company or they have been working there for long, for the company of the importer. Make sure it is not occasionally rented, because we have seen cases in which they just rent the warehouse for one order and then they just disappear. So it's very difficult to follow this fake company. Also, make sure the delivery point is not changed in the last minute without previous permission. We have to, if this happens, we have to be 100% sure that there's a real reason behind this change in the delivery address. because this is a very common way of acting uh, from the fake companies. As the last recommendation, we would like to we will be happy to welcome any methods in order to help to confirm if the company is real. So please feel free to contact the Spanish Chamber of Commerce in the United Kingdom, and we'll try to check this information on your behalf. As a related guidance, we will say three main points to be considered. The first one, contact the Spanish Chamber of Commerce in the United Kingdom if you got doubts about any order. If the order is en route to destination or has recently been delivered, contact the local security forces. We can help with that as well. And if the order has already been delivered and there has been no payment, um, um, present a formal complaint to local security forces. We recommend as well to inform the local authorities through this website link that we provide here. And we remind you that the Spanish Chamber of Commerce can only help to prevent. So we'll be more than happy to receive any email or any phone call when having doubts about this kind of companies, this kind of orders. Um, I don't want to extend more on this explanation. I would like to thank you all for listening to this video. I leave you my contact details here in case you want to contact me for any question related to the video we have presented here today. Really hoping you have found this information useful and really wish you all a good day. Take care.